January 14th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you're with us tonight. As we get started, let's all rise together and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Or here.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Here.
Commissioner Kulavini?
Here.
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Mayor Barnett?
Here. You're all here tonight. Thank you all. For those in the audience, there are copies of tonight's agenda on either side of the room. There's some shelves on each wall. For those watching at home, if you go to downers.us, in the lower left-hand corner, there is a link for this week's meetings where you'll also find the same documentation and information that we're looking at up here. Tonight we are going to start our next component of the agenda is a proclamation, so if you'll bear with me. Civil Rights Day will be celebrated next Monday, January 20th, which is before our next meeting. It's an important part of our nation's system of honoring and remembering events and attributes for which we're proud. No man is without a flaw, and as such, failure to live up to the ideals that all men are created equal, set forth by the founders of our great nation, have occurred far too often. But those flaws and those failures are no more a final judgment on our nation than they are an excuse for continued injustice. Through the course of history and some of our darkest hours, courageous people have stepped up and done the necessary work to remind us of what's right and to compel correction and keep us moving in the right direction. Whereas discrimination on the basis of history, gender, age, disability, race, religion, sexuality, or social economic status is antithetical to the values of our nation, our state, and our village. And whereas the Village of Downers Grove believes in fairness and equality and values our diverse population of both residents and businesses. And whereas this very diversity is one of this community's greatest strengths. And whereas we recognize that in order to build upon this diversity and maximize the potential benefit for our community, it is essential that equality of opportunity and the absence of discrimination be at the core of all the village's policies, procedures, and efforts. And whereas the village recognizes that individual liberty is one of the most important founding principles of our great nation and celebrates the diversity of faith, thought, and background that each individual contributes to the fabric of our American community. And whereas the village recognizes the crucial role government plays in ensuring an environment where discrimination is foreign to public policy and governance and individual liberty is free to flourish. Therefore, now I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of Downers Grove, in honor and recognition of Civil Rights Day, do proclaim January 20th as Civil Rights Day in the Village of Downers Grove, and the Village of Downers Grove affirms its commitment to holding up the individual as our greatest asset, encouraging tolerance and acceptance of differences among all residents and inclusion of all, recognizing that in those differences are the unique attributes which add to our community's strength, fabric, and vitality. Dated this 14th of January, 2020, Downers Grove, Illinois. Thank you all for that. That takes us to minutes of previous council meetings.
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt the minutes of the January 7th, 2020 meeting as presented.
Second.
Any comments? Any comments from the audience? Okay, please call the roll, Megan.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulavini?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. This takes us to Section 5 of our agenda. This is our first opportunity for public comment tonight. This is the portion of our meeting where we take public commentary or questions on any subjects not on tonight's agenda. There'll be other opportunities at agenda items to also weigh in. So if there's anyone who has something they want to discuss not on tonight's agenda, please come up to the podium. And nobody's jumping up, so we'll move on. Okay, that takes us to item 6, our consent agenda.
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any comments from the council on the consent agenda? Megan, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulavini?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously as well. Moving on to item 7, our active agenda. And this portion of our meeting is where we are taking up subjects on which we will take action tonight. We'll have an opportunity for questions or comments from the audience as well. Is there a motion for tonight's active agenda?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending Class O outdoor liquor license provisions as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on our amendment to the liquor ordinance? Any council comments or questions? Okay, Megan, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kulimäki?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That too passes unanimously. That's the end of our active agenda. See how quick we are? Takes us to our first reading. First reading items are items that we will be discussing tonight for the first time, usually, sometimes a second or third time, but we will not be acting on tonight. And over to Dave.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. There are two items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first is consideration of an ordinance regarding a special use for off-site parking, property at 4110 Finley Road. Here to present background information on this petition is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Manager Philman noted, the item tonight is a special use for an accessory use on a property without a principal use and a special use for a parking lot that is more than 1,000 feet from the use served at 4110 Finley Road. Property at 4110 Finley Road is in the northwest side of town here on the curve of Finley Road. And then if we look in a little bit closer, you can see the site here. It's an undeveloped parcel that is currently vacant. Bridge Development previously constructed 3 buildings onto the north here of the site at the corner of Lacey and Finley Road. The proposal is to construct a parking lot at this location that would serve a use in Building 3, which is approximately 2,000 feet away. Per the zoning ordinance, this distance requires a special use to do that. The parking lot, as shown here on the curve, would meet all the bulk zoning requirements such as setback and landscaping requirements that way as well. You can see in the upper right-hand corner of this picture there's a detention basin that would cover the stormwater from the parking lot. As proposed, after consultation with DuPage County and with our Public Works Department, there's a one-way in here on the north side, and then on the south side would be the one-way exit there from this parking lot. There are some turn lanes involved here as well. With regard to traffic, the village and DuPage County reviewed the proposal and the traffic study that was submitted by the applicant, and then there were some recommendations from DUDOT that were implemented as well as recommendations from staff. There will be minimal operations in terms of the impact on the traffic system. The petitioner Amazon operates in waves where the impact on the system is sort of spread about over both the non-peak and peak hours for traffic and peak demand times. And the turn lanes into the parking lot then help with that limited impact on the existing traffic system on Finley there. Additionally, the queuing of vehicles on the one-way out would anticipate to also help out with the traffic, where any queuing would basically occur inside the property and not queuing out on Finley Road there as well. There will also be a connection between buildings 2 and 3 as well, which will limit the traffic between those 2 buildings on the road network as well. With regard to the comprehensive plan talks about this area being office corporate campus, where sites benefit from proximity to the highway, and sites enhance the economic viability and productivity of the village's commercial properties. The Plan Commission considered this petition at the December 2nd meeting and found that the special use standards have been met. If there's any questions, I can answer those for you at this time. Additionally, Mark Hauser and his team from Bridge Development is here as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Stan. Any council comments or questions? Rich, you got some?
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to traffic, I know the report talks about 1.5% increase, which seems pretty small, but with regard to the intersection at Belmont, Ogden, we've got Warrenville right there, Finley. To what extent can we have any impact on the county and doing perhaps a study on how we might get better performance out of that intersection? It's already bad. This isn't going to make it particularly measurably worse. But ordinarily, we would do a traffic study of a particular area and take the action we think is appropriate. Because we've got the county and the state all over this, with that intersection, we can't really act on our own. Has there been any conversation with either one of them?
Yes, with both, actually. This is a conversation that was started by the Village of Downers Grove staff several years ago among state, IDOT, and DuPage County Department of Transportation. That whole corridor you mentioned, Warrenville Road, Finley Road, Ogden, and Belmont. There's some, and it also includes Cross Street that connects to Warrenville. And we have been receiving comments, questions, and concerns from folks who work in those office buildings on the north side of Warrenville Road. And then we've revisited it with the approval of Green Bay Packaging Building. So conversations have been ongoing. DuPage County commissioned informal study. I think they're moving on to a more formalized phase 1 study of improvements that could be made throughout that whole system to better manage traffic in general for that whole area. So we'll keep the council and the community updated as we go through that.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions?
I had a similar question. Thank you for that. But even on the other side of Finley and Butterfield, with the vacation of Book Drive, that was going from the service level of D through an F. And I thought I read in the report that that intersection at Belmont and Ogden is going from a D to an F, not specifically related to this project, but just because. So even though it's a state issue and a county issue, it impacts our resident in a big way because they really have no other choice. And I come home down 355, that backs up as well. Sometimes the alternative is to go over to Finley, and it's just, you know, I hope the residents don't think that we have our eyes closed to this issue. It's, I think it impacts our quality of life.
Thank you, Rich. Anyone else? Traffic is a big subject that I'm sure is on everybody's mind with this thing. And I know there's always, not always, often a disconnect between perception, reality, and technical elements. Dave, we talked about some of this afternoon, unrelated to this subject. Does the consideration that's in here that I haven't found yet talk about Belmont and the two entrances to the office park off of Belmont? You have one signaled at the west end and one, you know, right in, right out only by Cooper's Hawk there. I guess I'm wanting to understand more about what we think the effects on the office park are, because there's a lot of people coming and going in that section that are at their destination or trying to leave their destination, and there's a lot of non-signals. So if you were coming out of the parking garage trying to go left to get to the light up at Butterfield from the office park, you might struggle a little bit. And it seems like most of the focus that I've seen so far has been on sort of this Ogden Avenue intersection. And I guess I'd like to understand what we think the actual impact will be. Do we have estimated gaps in truck traffic? Do we think there will be actual material effects that people will feel and realize as they try and leave all those business entities north on Lacey Drive?
I think we can get you a specific written response to those questions.
Sure, yeah, this is not necessarily expected this evening.
We can work with the petitioner to get responses in writing to that by next week.
That, you know, unscientifically and anecdotally, that Lacey Drive just seems a lot different structurally than sort of Finley does. So I want to understand that better. Are there any questions or comments from the audience on this? Okay, we'll be talking about it again. Moving on, Dave.
Thank you. The last item on tonight's first reading agenda is consideration of an ordinance vacating a portion of public right-of-way adjacent to the property at 304 Prairie and a couple of addresses nearby on Florence. And Stan Popovich will also present the background information on this petition. Stan.
Thank you, Manager Fieldman. Good evening, Mayor and Council again. As Manager Fieldman noted, this is an alley vacation request at 304 Prairie, 4736 and 4740 Florence Avenue. The properties are on the east side of town here, just a little bit north of Maple Avenue, as shown here. We can see the three properties in question, 304 Prairies on the left, and then 4736 and 4740. The alley in question is between these three properties. There are only two petitioners that have requested portions of the alley, so the 4740 property on Florence there did not request their portion of the alley. With that being said, the alley would be split in this manner, where the blue goes over to the 304 property, and then 4736 would take half the alley adjacent to their property on the east side there. So the majority of the alley would go to the 304 Prairie property. The Planning Commission considered this petition at their December 2nd meeting and found that the proposal met the requirements of the alley vacation policy. If you have any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer those for you as well, and the petitioners are here tonight as well.
I just wanted to add to Stan's report. We charge under our policy, the council charges for the value of the land to be vacated. It is based on the per acre charge that we use for cash in lieu of land donations or school and parking fees. That was a change we made as far as the standardized value back in 2014, and we've been implementing it uniformly since 2015. Our policy does allow the petitioner to present additional information for council consideration when establishing the value, the amount to be charged. The petitioner did submit additional information, which was included in your packet and highlighted in the preparatory calls for tonight's meeting. So staff recommendation, in addition to the Plan Commission recommendation for approval on the vacation, is to charge according to our practice and policy that we have on file since the last 5 years or so. With that, we're happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you, Stan and Dave. Any council questions or comments on this? Marge, please.
Prior to the current system of valuation, there was a different system of valuation, but that was around for a handful or maybe a little bit more of years. But prior to that valuation, the village was giving them away free.
So,
Which
yes,
goes back quite a ways, but there was a time when these weren't being charged for at all.
Correct.
It's just somewhat changed over the years.
So
That's
the
all.
previous way of calculating the land value when we charged was based on the assessed value of the land of the petitioner. So we were standardized in our approach and relying on a third party to determine the amount. That would be the township assessor. Going back several years before that, I think prior to 2001-ish, 2003, I should look right there on the screen. Prior to 2003, I believe there were occasions where there were no dollar amounts charged for those vacations. So it's been an evolving policy, and we've had several stretches of many years where we have applied the same types of approaches in chunks.
Okay.
03 to about 14, and then 15 to 20.
Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Marge. Okay, any comments or questions from the audience? Please come on up to the microphone, let us know your name.
I'm Paul Lagno. I live at the 304 Prairie Avenue. And I'm the one that submitted the last section of the packet that you received. And I believe that it's, I don't see the connection between park and school donation and the 2003 resolution for alley vacations. I think the 2003 resolution is the one that you should go by, which means that you should determine the fair market value, what's fair for the land that you're selling me and my neighbor. So you need to evaluate what a parcel of land would cost around my house and do what you did with Marge in 2011 and allow vacation to be at a reasonable price. So that's all. All I'm asking is you to be fair, and you, according to the resolution, it says the amount and type of compensation, if any, to be required as a condition to the effectiveness of the vacation of the parcel is determined solely by this panel. So all I'm asking you to do is what's fair. $545,000 for an acre of land in that neighborhood is unreasonable. It's not fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this? Please come on to the microphone. We want to make sure those watching at home can hear as well.
Thank you, Council. My name is Brent Miller from 4736 Florence Avenue. Could you look back up? graphic that had the picture of how it breaks out. Oops, sorry, yeah, one forward on that. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to just make sure that it's clear on it. The picture that was showing up on here actually, just make sure everyone's fully aware, isn't the way that the plan is for how this actually is going to be split for the alley, that it's going to be essentially two stacked complete rectangles as opposed to kind of the carve out that you're seeing there. And so the green piece would be at the topmost portion of that, would extend about halfway down the property line for 4736 Florence, and then the remainder of it would be through down to the bottom part on there for the 304 Prairie address. So I just want to make sure that you have kind of the right information about exactly how that split's going to be happening as you're considering this.
So the split, as you're understanding it, is not as you see on this screen?
Right. It's just
Okay.
a different shape. Unless there's something change with that.
I noticed
Yeah.
that too. I thought it was going to come up with the other slide.
Well, we'll make sure we get that clarified.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Any additional commentary from council or questions from council? We'll be taking this up again sometime soon.
And with that, that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. How about the manager's report? You got one?
I have no report. Oh, you know what? I do have a report tonight. Just a reminder that we're holding our first coffee with the council this weekend, Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Downers Grove Library. It is an open forum for residents to address their council members informally on any topic of their choice. I'll be there. I'm sure council members will be there. We're looking forward to it. Please join us. Thank you. That is the report tonight.
Thank you for that reminder. Okay, that takes us to our attorney's report. I suspect we have one.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mayor. Only two items. An ordinance authorizing a special use to provide off-site parking over 1,000 feet away from the user and establish an accessory use before the principal use is established at 4110 Finley Road. And an ordinance vacating a certain portion of the public alley right away in between the properties located at the Prairie and 3736 and 4748 Florence Avenue. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Thank you, Enzo. Takes us to item 11, our agenda, which are mayor and council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to bring up subjects of interest to them, typically goings on in the community or activities they may have had in their job elsewhere. So we'll start this time with Kavanaugh, put him on the spot.
No reports, Mayor.
Thanks, Kavanaugh. Marge?
No report, Mayor.
Greg?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Rich?
I have one report. A week from tomorrow night, Wednesday, January 22nd, the Downers Grove Historical Society will be hosting Preserving Your Home and Its History. It will start at 6:30 at Emmett's Brewing Company. And Amy Gasson, the Vice President of the Downers Grove Historical Society, will be presenting the Historic Home Program, which is an honorary program that is eligible for architecturally significant or historically significant homes that go back older than 50 years, and our very own Director of Community Development, Stan Popovich, will be presenting the village's official landmarking program. The best way to get tickets, you might ask, is go to Eventbrite and simply type in the Downers Grove Historical Society, or you can go to our Facebook page. Look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks, Rich. Leslie?
I just want to point out that on Friday at the Downers Grove Public Library, I went to an excellent presentation from one of our Downers Grove South students, Therese Milanowski, who created a database for high school seniors or anybody who's planning on going to college about how certain colleges handle sexual assault and harassment on campus. She literally created a website by herself and collected all of the data, and the project has now been taken up by the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, ICASA. So it's called Project Dandelion, so please go check it out and really give her a lot of credit for the amount of work that she put into it. So congrats.
Thanks, Leslie. Nicole?
I do have a report, Mayor. So not only is there a coffee with the council at the library on Saturday from 9 to 10, there is also a presentation by Watts of Love, which is a local volunteer organization who is involved with providing global solar lighting to people that are in impoverished areas. So that is Saturday also at 11:30. So you could come to our coffee from 9 to 10. You can read a book, take a break from some screen time, and then catch that presentation at 11:30 to learn about some of their volunteer opportunities. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I just have one kind of wrap up on the proclamation earlier today. Next Monday is Civil Rights Day, and of course, that comes before our next meeting. But I want to encourage all residents and businesses to reflect on the importance of civil rights, and as we do so, commit ourselves to regularly asking, are our words and are our actions improving the feeling that people get of all stripes and colors, that they're welcome and valued in our community? There are lots of ways that people can feel less than welcome, and sometimes they're not even recognized by those that put them in that position. So just taking a little bit of stock of what you say and what you do, both personally and if you own a business or operate a business, policy-wise, and how you operate your business. The single biggest thing we can do to ensure that all people are treated equally is start doing that ourselves and reflect on it a little bit. So take Monday as an opportunity to reflect a little bit on how you operate and make sure you're doing the right thing. So with that, we would be adjourning, but we are not going to. We're going to go into executive session this evening. So is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that the council convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the village.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous. We are going to move to executive session. Thank you all for coming tonight.